think I was done? Welcome back to the Panic Room, guys, and to another episode of Pax's Little Library of Horrors. Got another awesome kids book for us today, everyone. So, if you watched my last episode, I mentioned that I discovered a bunch of gems for this series based on this video by Wang. And today is one of those books that I came across thanks to my kind of deep dive after I watched that video. And it is The Ghost of Skinny Jack by Astrid Lindgren. Lindgren? I think I'm saying that right. You know, I know this is a thin book, but we can't really read it because if you see, there's a lot written on each page. So it might seem like a thin book, but there's a lot more to this story than a lot of the other children's books that we have read. You know, I loved the name, The Ghost of Skinny Jack. And then when I saw this cover, I was like, that is awesome. And since we aren't going to be reading this in its entirety, I did want to show you some of the amazing artwork that is in here. You know, so we have like a scene here with the body. It's just so much. Kids' books just blow me away sometimes with their art. So there is our church and our cemetery. Yeah, just a nice little horse and carriage. So I have read this, and to give you an overview, no, it is not the spookiest thing we've read as far as children's books are concerned, but it deals with something that we haven't touched on, I don't feel like, in this series, and that is kind of the effect, maybe, that scary stories can have on a kid, and you know, kind of touching on the nostalgia and how they are passed down and how parts of us sort of go into these stories, especially when they're passed down via word of mouth. Now, the one part I did want to read you, just to kind of give you a taste of this book, is the beginning of the story where you find out who Skinny Jack is. So, let's do that, shall we? Skinny Jack was a wild young man who was forever getting into mischief and doing crazy things, although he was the person's farmhand and should have known better. Now, if there was someone who Skinny Jack couldn't stand, it was the church organist. He couldn't get along with that man. The organist was the one who played the hymns in church on Sunday. And sometimes he played the church organ at night as well because he had a key and could come and go as he pleased. And he loved to play music, both night and day. Now, one dark autumn night, Skinny Jack came up with an evil plan to scare the organist half to death. That rogue dressed up as a ghost in a white sheet and put on a hideous mask that glowed in the dark. He then snuck into the church where the poor organist was sitting peacefully and playing sweetly. Suddenly there was the most dreadful bellowing, and up near the altar stood the most horrible ghost you could have ever imagined. The organist screamed and dashed for the door as fast as his legs would carry him, but the ghost was after him, chasing him the whole length of the church. The organist ran for his life and at the very last second managed to get out of the door. Behind him came the ghost, who didn't want to be left alone in the church either, because he was afraid of ghosts. And then he got what was coming to him. Just as he made it through the church door, he felt someone grab him from behind. He was so terrified that his blood turned to ice, for who could be taking hold of him like that except another ghost, or worse still, God wanting to punish him for scaring the organist in a church of all places. And look at this. Is that not awesome? Ugh. So, yeah, let's keep going. The next day was a Sunday, and when the congregation arrived at the church, led by the parson and the organist, they found Skinny Jack lying cold and stiff right in front of the church door. But he wasn't a ghost, or God, who had grabbed him. It was the heavy church door that had slammed shut, catching the sheet and trapping Skinny Jack. He wasn't dead, but he wasn't alive either, far from it. His blood had turned to ice and would never flow again, so Skinny Jack became a real ghost. That's what can happen if you scare someone in church. What in the actual hell? I mean, I think that's a little odd to have in a kid's book. So it goes on that the grandmother is telling the kids about this maid because Skinny Jack has become a legend in this village. And this maid comes along a number of years later, and, you know, she's known for not being scared of anything. So this rich, bruh dares her to go get Skinny Jack from the church, thinking she'll chicken out. Well, she does it. And she comes back and kind of just throws the corpse, in front of him and is like, where's my money? And so he pays up and he's like, all right, I'll take him back. And she's like, oh, no. You paid me to bring him here. You got to pay me to take him back. And sure enough, he has to. He has to pay her to take him back. And that's when you see this. This is the maid carrying Skinny Jack back to the church. But on the way back, antics ensue. Skinny Jack wants to be taken to the organist's grave so that he can apologize and possibly make it into heaven. Kind of deep stuff for a kid's book, right? But it doesn't end there. The little girl, because it's a brother and sister visiting their grandmother, getting told this story. The little girl is kind of getting more wrapped up in it than the boy. You know, the boy is kind of drawn to be more older, you know, able to, I guess, have a more firm grip on reality than his little sister. And so after the story is complete, they take off on their way back home through the woods, and it talks about how the little girl is scared to become frightened because she's afraid she will end up like Skinny Jack. And, you know, the father ends up coming along and saving them. But, you know, on the way home, the little boy is playing the guitar, and it's stuff like, he was singing, in a deep and endless wood, in the wood a lonesome moan, a child crying all alone. Home sweet home and father near, home to everything that's dear. I mean, anyone else think that's kind of morbid? Just to be like strumming that when there's a little girl, you know, terrified of the woods and about becoming a ghost. Like, the fact that the brother is just singing that. Like, I have a brother, and I can just see him, like, doing that and then just looking at you like, because they know exactly what the hell they're doing. If you have a sibling, I feel like you know. So, yeah, they make it home, and the little girl says, do you think I'll ever really be myself again after this? I asked my brother. Probably. Pretty much so anyway. But I was still worried. What about that parson's maid? She was never herself again. You know that. And my brother laughed. You're not as crazy as she was, he said. And that's the end. Like, the little girl is worried that, you know, the fact that she got scared in the woods is going to somehow change her. You know, and she's been influenced by this story. I don't know, I really thought that this kind of touched on some stuff about child psychology maybe, and about how, you know, we kind of take these stories and try to make them our own, or see ourselves in the stories. I thought this was an interesting look at that, especially in a little kid's book. I mean, this is just an average length for a child's book. You know, not a teen, not a young adult, this is child. And yeah, I thought that was really creepy and kind of weird. So, guys, thanks for coming back for another episode of Pax's Little Library of Horrors. You know, if you like this, you know, hit that thumbs up, hit subscribe. It would really help me out. And until next time, I'll see you guys in another episode. Bye for now.